when the biggest money in the world is draining the exchanges and the central banks are buying it, why don't people see this? They certainly saw it when Silicon Bank failed and Signature Bank failed, but I guess the banking system is okay now. Well, what happens when the next bank fails? What happens if one of them is bailed in and the people freak out? In a matter of seconds, everything in this industry is gone.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for March 4th through March 11th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce silver maples at $3.39 over spot. We also have circulated British gold Queen Elizabeth sovereigns at $26.99 over melt. And finally, we're offering our choice 1-ounce Palladium bars at just $119 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We are always glad to have this widely followed returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He joins us for a weekly market update every week, and today is Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Again, it's always good to be here, my man. It's always good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we wanted to talk with you about several things this week. One of them is we have to address is gold breaking out to new all-time highs against the U.S. dollar. Friday was an all-time weekly close against the dollar, and the Monday and Tuesday we've been holding steady above 2,100, what was previously a resistance level 3 top resistance, and now looks like maybe a support level. We'll see. But all of the analysts that we've spoken with have been telling us for the past couple of quarters that the fundamentals are firmly in place. All the lights are green and go for gold and silver to begin a major bull run. And one of the most humorous aspects of the fact that they've just broken out to all-time highs several days in a row, that is gold, is that it can no longer be ignored by the mainstream financial press, who have been roundly either denouncing gold or flatly ignoring it for the past decade or so, especially the last couple of years. And now all of a sudden, and it's we've also spoken a couple of times for the benefit of our viewers that mainstream retail investment advisors have been directing people over into stocks, bonds, real estate, ETFs, things like that. And yet I'm getting notes from clients that even big shot, high net worth type retail investment advisors now are saying, hey, you got to get into GLD because it's about to get stupid expensive, et cetera. So I don't know whether it's makes you laugh or cry, or maybe both, for depending who we care about people. We care that they not be hurt and they not be left out. But the fact that the retail investment advisors only seem to wake up when something's breaking out to new all-time highs and not to see it as the insurance that it is and the actual intrinsically valuable wealth that it is. Anyway, any comments that you have on gold's new highs and the awakening of the retail public, perhaps the beginning of that now?
Well, look at the difference between, like, for example, NVIDIA and Bitcoin versus gold. I mean, you see massive bullish sentiment in both of those other two areas. You see nothing but positive news stories and FOMO that is just everywhere you look, and markets that defy the laws of gravity. It's something that is almost impossible to ignore. Even people who understand that, professional traders would never touch a market that's going straight up like that. Yet you have FOMO everywhere. People are saying, well, geez, could this time be different? When we compare it to gold, as an example, with gold, you have sentiment in the toilet. We've been talking about this for months now, that where are all the retail buyers, even though the underlying characteristics, like for me, it's been, the massive buying by the central banks, right? That's certainly giving it away, so to speak. So anyways, with sentiment in the toilet right now in precious metals, and, I was scanning over Twitter, and, you get these people that are saying, oh, well, your $12 move in gold, what good does that do you? Be careful spending all your $12 in one place. This was as gold was moving up $12. Comparison to, Bitcoin defying logic, defying gravity. And these people who are making these comments weren't even born probably when I started in this industry, and realize that if you make 6 or 7% per year, you are a rock star. But let's just talk about it. So in the metals market, you have sentiment low. You have the mining industry upside down distressed and really kind of disconnected, if you will, from the price of gold and silver. Well, let's just focus on gold for a moment, where gold has been going straight up, and yet the mining shares have been horrible. The capital spending in that area is at unprecedented lows. And this is at a time when there's a massive amount of overwhelming levels, if you will, of debt worldwide, both publicly and with the governments. And when you talk about, there's been talk for years of peak gold. New discoveries are rare. And, the quantity and quality of the reserves that are already there are beginning to deteriorate. And so when you see gold moving in this light, let's also remember that gold is now rising as bond prices are falling. This is another big deal, right? And because for a long time, and this is a very significant development as far as I'm concerned, one that shouldn't be overlooked in any capacity, because for a long time, bond prices and gold have been positively correlated, where if the bond prices go up, interest rates go down, making gold more attractive, right? Because that's Gibson's paradox. Gibson's paradox is the inverse relationship between real interest rates, and, we have to take the CPI as being legit when we know it's not, but let's just pretend it is. And as the price of bonds have been falling, interest rates have been rising, and now we see gold moving in that environment where, even in a real interest rate environment, a positive real interest rate environment, gold has done very well. And I think that's the market's way of saying that they see inflation being a bigger problem than the Fed is leading on to. And we've been saying that for a long time, too. So I guess what I'm simply saying to you is that when you look at the other markets reaching all-time highs, it's on the back of amazing optimism and enthusiasm and you could say irrational exuberance. And yet gold is quietly reaching all-time highs on the heels of tremendously poor fundamentals that would only, I believe, add fuel to the fire as people start to wake up to this. I think the potential for gold to go much higher is real. And look, anyone in this market, my parents have a dog. That they rescued from the pound. And it took a couple years for me to be able to pet the thing without it screeching. And because I think it was hit when it was from its previous owners. It was abused. And that's how the people who are in this market feel. They're waiting to be smashed. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But we have broken through resistance. There is none at this point above. Where does it go? Don't know. Is this the beginning of the move that we've all been expecting? I don't know. But I will tell you that when you see the central banks buying as much as they have, something we've been very consistent in saying, when you see gold rising in the face of bond prices that are falling, meaning interest rates are rising, it's rising in a real interest rate, positive real interest rate environment, it's very big. And when you see a market that, as we've said how many thousands of times, you and I was listening to Matthew Piepenburg talking about this with Elijah in his last interview with you just the other day. He said the same thing, 0.5% allocation. So nobody owns it but the central banks, the most well-funded and well-informed traders. The industry has been left for dead with virtually nothing in exploration, and the mining shares are at their lowest level ever, disconnected from the price of gold. The fundamentals would say that this is something that shouldn't be reaching all-time highs, yet very quietly, as everyone is fixated on NVIDIA and on Bitcoin, gold is making all-time highs. Where does it go from here? I guess we will see. But I would tell you that I am very bullish ultimately as for where gold ultimately ends up, but I don't expect it to be a straight linear line. It never has been. But maybe, just maybe, I'll throw it out there, maybe this time it surprises us. We're up $130 or so over the last 2.5 trading days. That's not a trend, but it is the beginning of one, perhaps. Let's see where it brings us at the end of this week. And with a sustained rally, I think this is something that people should look at and understand that maybe this time it is different. Maybe this time it is different because of all of the things that we've talked about, whether it be, the craziness here at home, the open borders, the election, the Justice Department, the lawlessness, the money printing, the craziness. Or maybe it has a lot to do with the weaponizing of the dollar, or the fact that our brain-dead Secretary of Treasury goes to Brazil in Russia's backyard, part of the BRICS, and says, we need to confiscate those assets, not just freeze them. We need to confiscate them. And the hubris, the idiocy, the flat-out stupidity of the Secretary of Treasury telling the world in Brazil, a member of the BRICS, that we need to confiscate those assets, not just sanction them. We need to use it to rebuild the Ukraine. I mean, if that isn't a shot across the bow of the BRICS, if that doesn't cement the rallying cry, I don't know what does. So maybe this is the beginning. One of these days it will be. It's like the little boy who cried wolf. That's me. And I'm fine with that. It is. But I know the wolf's coming. Just don't know if we're at the last page of the story yet or not. I guess only time will tell.
The one comment you mentioned about Yellen going to Brazil and saying, hey, can we get you on board to confiscate and not just freeze, but seize the Russian assets, et cetera, so we can use them to prosecute the war in Ukraine. And yes, that totally can be an example of hubris of a dying empire thinking that it still has what it no longer has, and that's the ability to sway the world. It can also be, if you think about it as 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional chess, whatever, it can be, as Bill Holter says, too stupid to be stupid, meaning if you really did want to crash the currency so that you could bring in a CBDC, central bank digital currency, which allows, the one currency to rule them all, to track and trace everything everybody does, as G. Edward Griffin says, to track and regulate all human activity. What's your view on that? I know it's not your position or your expertise necessarily to tell us what's going on in the minds of the great big thinkers, but
it is. That's what I've been saying. I believe it. Dunnigan, I believe it. Look, Janet Yellen made a comment not too long ago saying that the dollar is used as a tool for policy decision. And what the dollar is a tool of sanctions. And she knows very well that by weaponizing the dollar, the consequences are real. And I keep telling everyone, how many times have I said Jared Bernstein wants to lose the reserve status, the lead economic advisor to the U.S. government? So what do you do to lose the reserve status? Well, you weaponize the dollar, you sign an executive order to go green, the linchpin of the dollar hegemony. And by weaponizing the dollar and doing it in a way that is wholly hypocritical, the way the rest of the world would view it, is enough to light the fuse. And then you destabilize this country for everyone to see, not just us here who are disturbed by what we see around us, but the rest of the world. That's not lost on them. And they say, what the hell has happened to that country? And it makes it much easier for them to unite against a country that's lost its bearings, that is no longer the beacon of truth and liberty and justice and freedom, when there are questions if there's a two-tiered status of justice and open borders and the lawlessness and the money printing and the wokeness and all of the things that this country is literally, our culture has been whitewashed. I think it makes it much easier for them to pull this trigger. So I do think that's how you do it. And that falls right into the hands of the number 2 advisor, Lael Brainerd, modern monetary theorist, ran point for FedNow, helped develop the CBDC with MIT, that Biden fast-tracked by executive order. And so when you talk about could this be done, Richard Russell, God bless his soul, always said the Fed has 2 choices. This was 20 years ago, inflate or die. And he meant it. Well, here we are. Look, in 2008, the national debt was $17 trillion. We've doubled it since then. We're in a way worse position than we ever were then. So what is their options? Inflate, default. And that's what we've been seeing. Should we raise rates? Should we not raise rates? Should we pivot? Because if you go too high, the market blows up. Everything everything blows up. If you inflate, well, then ultimately it leads to much higher inflation and higher rates. Everything blows up. We're at that point where we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. So how about option 3, find a villain? And that villain would be those countries that pulled the plug on the dollar and its hegemony. Well, geez, they were incentivized through sanctions and through the threat of sanctions and through the admission that, hey, we're going green. We don't need you anymore. We don't need the petrodollar anymore. So do I think that they could do it? Yeah, because in that moment, as I've said on your show 100 times or more, when the countries around the world says, look, we don't want your debt anymore, you're adding $1 trillion every 100 days. I mean, come on. Every 100 days, we're adding $1 trillion, and 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. Every 100 days, we're adding $1 trillion. We're a country that has lost its bearings. And if you're not on our side, we're going to sanction you. And not just sanction you like we did Iran, but we're going to confiscate your assets to fund our agenda. Even if you don't align with it ideologically, that's too bad. And so everything we have done, as Bill says, I don't think it is too stupid to be stupid. Therefore, to me, there is a high probability. And again, this is where there's a fine line about the size of a piece of dental floss between conspiracy and reality. Could this be conspiracy? It sure sounds like it. To someone who hasn't thought about any of this stuff, they'd say, oh, he's full of crap. That could never happen. But really? I mean, look at what we're doing. We are incentivizing the world to run away from us. We are incentivizing the world to find a new standard. And then, you know, if this country was united and had its act together like we did when we were kids and our parents were running the show, the adults in the room, yeah, maybe we could pull ourselves out of this nosedive. But I wonder if we're too far down the road to do that. So, yes, I think it is very, very likely intended. Hate to say it, but if I'm being completely honest, I think there's a greater chance that this is intended than not, because now you find a villain, and when they dump the dollars and interest rates spike to high heaven, not only do you blow up the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market, but you blow up the over-leveraged banks and the over-leveraged insurance companies, which are all loaded with treasuries and bonds. And now you point to those guys that did it to us. Oh my gosh, how could they do it to us? And everyone will get behind the new system because everything blows up. Either you take the new system, which is modern monetary theory, or you starve to death. And that's how you get people who would never take it. That's how you get them to begrudgingly and reluctantly acquiesce, either that or starve. So, yeah, Dunnigan, I think it's intended. Wish I didn't, but I do.
I guess I'll go down on record as saying that in the past, struggling dictators and leaders have always resorted to war as a way of shoring up you don't change horses in the middle of the stream, that sort of thing. And here, I would predict that they're going to call that economic war. They're going to say, look, Putin and all those bad guys and China are waging economic war on the United States by destroying the security of our dollar. That threatens the security of our country. That threatens the security of democracy in the world. And therefore, for the sake of everyone's security and for democracy, we have to come out with this central bank digital currency, which they're not going to tell us absolutely takes away all of our privacy, all of our freedoms, all of our constitutional liberties, etc. They're just going to tell us we are at war and you need to support the war effort by getting behind this currency because that's how we're going to fight back against this tyranny of the rest of the world.
Right. Well, the people that know better wouldn't take it because of all the things you just said. But if you're forced to take it because everything that you value as wealth is now vaporized, yeah, you're going to take it. And I think that's really always been the question. How do you get people to take it? And I think we are well on our way to getting to that point where, look, you could say we've already lost faith with a good deal of the world, and let alone half the country. And so we are in a place right now that I think is ripe for that type of a move. And I don't know about you, but every day we get closer to the election, I'm waiting for something to happen. And I'm not just saying a terrorist attack or anything like that, but something. Banking system. Look, March 11th, everyone's talking about the funding program, March 11th that ends. Yeah, that means they're able to write loans up until March 11th and then no more. But I mean, after a few weeks past March 11th, the majority of the loans that were written at the time the banks were really distressed, well, those come due. What's going to happen? Are we going to see a bank failure? And if we see several bank failures, will one of them be bailed in like the Dodd-Frank law suggests is law? Or are they all going to be gobbled up by JP Morgan in a consolidation effort? As Powell told us, a lot of these regional banks will be consolidated. But look at some of the properties that are selling right now for pennies on the dollar. 2 very large buildings in San Francisco that are owned by, let's see here, they are owned by the Paramount Group they're now writing off for $1 or nothing, zero. They were bought for, hundreds of millions of dollars, 2 giant buildings that have been there forever, written off because the cost of maintaining it and paying for it and the loan is worth way more than the buildings are worth. They're just walking away from it. That's just one example. You're seeing that all over the place. And the regional banks are the ones that hold all of these commercial real estate loans. We're getting to that moment. And all it will take will be for one bank to fail and be bailed in, for the people to wake up, because nobody knows what the heck a bail-in is. Yeah, your listeners do, but I bet you not everyone who listens to you does. It's one of these deals that they slid in that, there's $7 trillion of uninsured deposits in the banking system. We're sitting on a powder keg. And the question is, what lights it? I don't know, but I think that there will be something that sets the fuse off here before too long. And if not, like Bill said, this entire setup is just too stupid to be stupid. So, yeah, I'm waiting for something to happen to shake up the narrative.
Well, I'm not pleased to report that there are stories being published about even who have been described as liberal leaders in the past, either politically and in media, etc., corporate leaders as well, who are busily advocating or anticipating that there could be civil war coming, that kind of thing. You mentioned half the country being estranged, and building bunkers for themselves, that sort of thing. So in addition to all the central banks amassing gold stockpiles worldwide, well, at least in the East, anywhere but the U.S.,
well, and think about this too. Your roots in this on YouTube is in preparation, right? Reluctant preppers, and in someone who prepares, listen to what they're doing, right? I'm sure you've read this, but I'm just going to read you 2 paragraphs here. On Sunday night, congressional negotiators revealed a bill which would fund key parts of the government through the rest of the fiscal year, which began in October. The 1,050-page legislation sets a discretionary spending level of $1.66 trillion for year 2024, which comes just days after lawmakers passed the 4th stopgap measure since October 1st to keep the government funded a bit longer. The entire U.S. 1 million barrel Northeast gasoline supply reserve will be required to be sold, and the entire reserve infrastructure closed in fiscal 2024 in order to fund this. So they're taking 1 million barrels of oil that were held, and they built this storage facility after Hurricane Sandy for emergencies, for things that you should prepare for. Well, they're pillaging it right now and selling it just to keep the lights on for a little bit longer. And not only that, they're mothballing the entire deal. They're not going to fill it back up. So we are putting ourselves not only socially and morally and spiritually and religiously and everything that means something to this country. That's what we stood for. We're also putting ourselves at a horrible state of preparedness with open borders and 12 million people here illegally. We're getting rid of our strategic stockpile of oil. We're massively indebted. I mean, the whole thing, you couldn't make it up. We are not in a position to fight back and to stand up. And it to me is the most troubling part of all of this. But I think it's all connected. I do. And I think that's how diabolical they are, to realize that if you reset the system, you have to inflict enough pain to where people say, I'll take the new system. Let's go. We got to do this.
I'll add a little bit to underscore what you just said, and that is the disarming of the populace and the arming of the state. We've interviewed both constitutional attorneys John Whitehead from the Rutherford Institute as well as constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira, and he'll be out again twice in the next 2 weeks, Dr. Edwin Vieira, talking about the Second Amendment being under fire. There are pages of so-called gun control bills out there right now that are completely dependent on the whim of a pen of this or that governor to approve or deny them, that would strip citizens of their constitutional rights to bear arms. And he keeps underscoring for us that the reason we have the constitutional right to bear arms is to serve as the militia to resist invasion, to resist tyrannical overthrow from without and from within. So at any rate, that's completely lost in the face of then arming, 80,000, 90,000 new IRS agents. And John Whitehead reminds us how many hundreds of thousands of rounds or millions of rounds of hollow point ammunition are being issued out to all the different, Department of Human Services and the departments. You'd wonder, why the heck do they need all these?
Yeah, that tells you they're waiting for insurrection. They're waiting for the people to be so pissed off that they revolt, And just like they did Marie Antoinette, hopefully they don't drag Paulson out in the street and behead him. But that's what the environment we've created, the divisiveness, the anger, the hatred, red and blue and black and white and vaccine and no vaccine. And, the whole thing where I was flying back last night from Florida to Florida from Wisconsin. And when I landed yesterday afternoon, I could see the people who are watching TV on the airplane, on the back of the seats. And as we were landing, getting into Palm Beach, Trump came on to speak of the 9-0 decision of the Supreme Court in his favor, and as they should have, no matter what side you're on. I mean, no one state should be able to determine the election for the whole country. But anyways, it was very interesting. Half of the first class was watching Fox, and the other half, in essence, was watching CNBC. I mean, that's pretty much all that was on. They're watching Fox or CNBC. And as we're landing, Trump starts to speak. And Fox is broadcasting the entire thing. And it was nowhere to be found on CNBC. I could see both TVs and nowhere to be seen. And so it's like they're not even telling the public what's going on. They're not presenting an accurate story. There's so many people who are not aligned with the things that we talk about simply because we have a media that has chosen sides and is not giving a balanced view. The journalistic integrity or investigative journalism is gone. And that's why people need to be watching YouTube to get real information that people like you and I work our butt off to try to find and present in a manner that, it hopefully opens people's eyes. Because, and one of the things that Matthew Piepenburg said on that interview with Elijah, one of the last things he said is, fact check what I'm saying, fact check what everyone is saying. So I'd like people to fact check the things I say. I tried damn hard to make sure that they're right. And I'll tell you, Dunnigan, I think that things are going to get real interesting as we get into March 11th, as we get to the end of the bank funding program, and as we start to get closer and closer and closer to the election. Let's not even forget about the 200 BRICS meetings leading up to the big one in October. This is going to be one heck of an interesting ride between now and fall. And I'm sure every Tuesday there'll be more and more to talk about. I could keep going for the next hour if you want, but I know that won't work. I do know that there'll be a lot more to pick up with where we left off next week, though. That's for sure.
Well, I want to underscore one more thing you just said, and that's I agree. We've been railing against journalistic integrity and, frankly, integrity of our statesmen and political leaders, the integrity of the medical establishment. And you start to realize that all of the major institutions that are supposed to be for the people, of the people, by the people, and standing up for the good of public health or public whatever, have basically conflict of interest. More than that, they're frankly operating subsidiaries of higher organizations. The media, you mentioned the media. So the Ron Paul Institute says that if people understood that our media is more controlled than the Soviet era media was in Russia, that would be a more accurate understanding of that. The CDC, we've interviewed Dr. Jay Nielsen several times on our channel. He ran research studies for 13 years for the FDA. And he said that the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, if people understood that those are doing they are beholden to, they're basically a sub-branch of the major international drug industry. And the President of the United States, we've had Jerry Robinson, founder of he's the author of Bankruptcy of Our Nation, talking about that if people understood that the president of the United States is really middle management. When he gets elected, he gets taken into a private room and told how things run in Washington by the deep state, and comes out rather ashen-faced and a humble role player from there on out. So,
well, if anyone believes that our current president is making decisions, I got a bridge to sell you, and that becomes very obvious when you see the current administration. But let's not forget the Bureau of Labor Statistics that tells us about inflation and about full employment. And it just so happens that those are the mandates by which the Federal Reserve bases all of their policy. And so, the Federal Reserve isn't being honest with us either. And why do you think the BRICS want to make their own rating agencies? Because the rating agencies are bought and paid for, the Moody's and the S&P and so the entire infrastructure has been infected and is sick. So that's why we hope that a change comes. Certainly, I mean, is it false hope? Is it foolish to think that changes could come? I don't know. I mean, you get cynical and jaded after a while, but the bottom line is that the path that we are on right now is not sustainable. So let's hope change is afoot. That's for sure.
Now, another reason we have you on for the weekly market update is that you have a unique vantage point and experience base within the heart of the retail precious metals bullion industry. People have been wondering for some time, and I think you've shared your amazement at it as well, is that with all of these fundamentals, all these trends, all these unprecedented levels of distortions that have been going on, the retail demand has been surprisingly light. The retail availability has been surprisingly good. The retail premiums have been surprisingly low. Do you see any early warning signs that those things are going to be changing and people should be appraised of that?
Yesterday I did. And it's the first time in, roughly since Thanksgiving. So you got December, January, February. So we're going on 3.5, 4 months, maybe even longer, where actually we can probably even go back to late summer, early fall, when the U.S. Mint dumped 4 million Silver Eagles on the market. For the last several months, maybe 6 months, that's been one of the things I've been consistent in saying as well. The contradictory nature of what I see happening on the upper levels with the mines and the mints and the big epicenters of metal being bled dry slowly and methodically, quietly, not to raise too much attention. The LBMA, the COMEX, even the Shanghai Exchange, the backdooring out of SLV and PSLV and all of the ways in which we are seeing, even now with arbitrage, where Shanghai is listing the price higher in Shanghai than in London or in the United States. And these are sophisticated investors who have access to all of these platforms that are bleeding dry the exchanges at a period of time where this country's lost its flipping mind, at a period of time where the BRICS coalition is growing legitimacy and scope and size. And I wonder to myself, what am I missing? I mean, where is everyone? And maybe it's NVIDIA going to the moon. Maybe it's the bull crap that we get out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the talking heads that say, oh, it's a soft landing and inflation's under control, and all of this nonsense that have people anesthetized into believing that, this is the U.S., everything always finds its way to work itself out. At the same time, the biggest money in the world is telling us a different story. The most sophisticated, well-informed investors in the world, the central banks, are on a buying spree that the world's never seen. That ought to tell you right there. I mean, if that doesn't tell you, then you're not really understanding the way that this works, that the big money is always 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of the public, and they do it when no one else is looking in that direction. That's how they position themselves and do so in a manner that allows them to achieve their goals. They have all the money, they control the media, they control the narrative, they control the markets. All of these things aids their ability to reposition. And I'm wondering, where is the public? Well, yesterday would be the first time that I've noticed a change. And we've had some very large orders recently, and those large orders have dried up a lot of all of the excess product that we have that is not 2024. Call it back.
I saw the 2023 Silver Eagles sold out.
Yeah, and so did the Maple Leafs. And and things are disappearing. So did the backdate kangaroos are gone, and just like that. And that's how it always happens. So, okay, so now we're at a point where gold has gone up 3 days in a row. What if it really jumps over the next few days and people now really start moving on to it? What has been several months, and I've been saying, it's hard. I understand human nature is, he's saying it's a great deal and you should buy it and everything's on sale. Yeah, he's talking his book. Blah. I mean, that's unfortunately, we're all wired to be cynical. I get it. I didn't mean it that way. I meant it like, where the hell is everyone when the biggest money in the world is draining the exchanges and the central banks are buying it? Why don't people see this? They certainly saw it when Silicon Bank failed and Signature Bank failed, but I guess the banking system is okay now. Well, what happens when the next bank fails? What happens if one of them is bailed in and the people freak out? In a matter of seconds, everything in this industry is gone, and we go right back to where we were in 2020, 2021, 2022, and the first half of 2023 with long delivery delays, undependable supply chains, high premiums, insecurity. And so yesterday was the first time I've seen it, and now premiums have crept for the first time in a very long time. And what I will tell you is that up until yesterday, I would tell you it was the best buying opportunity I've seen in my career ever, where premiums were close to where they were most of my 34-year career with much lower spot prices. And the fundamentals that would make you want to do this, to me, I'm scratching my head. How do people not see what's happening? And why are they not completely afraid? Or do they believe that Bitcoin is all you need to protect yourself? And I'm not a Bitcoin basher. I'm not. I own one or two Bitcoin. I'm not a Bitcoin basher, but I think that, what does every central bank on the planet own? And that's gold. And ultimately, I think it will be the foundation of a new system. So maybe that changes. Maybe people wake back up here pretty quick. But right now is the first time, and I'll say it publicly, in let's say almost 6 months that we've seen premiums bottom and start to turn up. So is it the beginning of a sustained rally in the metals and sustained higher premiums and more issues with delivery like we've seen? Big Swear will tell you that the U.S. Mint is at it again, and they're not issuing much in the way of Silver Eagles. So I guess only time will tell. But yes, I do believe that premiums have begun to turn up, and it happened yesterday.
In the face of all of that, I know that's been problematic when we get these snap turns, when you get the tide shifting to hold with the specials that we announce. But yet every Tuesday we ask you if you have specials for us. So we're going to ask. But I guess the caveat here is that if things shift quickly, we will hold these special prices as long as we can.
I'm only worried about the silver in these specials, Dunnigan, because, we've had many 7-figure orders lately, and they're all buying the cheap silver coins. So the silver coins that I'm talking about right now are backdate silver maple leafs at 339 over. I'm worried that won't last very long. But we also have the 1 ounce gold Velcambi bars at 59 over, and the 1 ounce Palladium bars, various designs, but all carded at 119 over. And, all three are attractive for different reasons, but the only thing that I'm worried about in terms of supply right now would be that particular special, because look, they're cheap, and these were coins that were $8-9 over spot the better part of the last 3 years. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. We'll see what tomorrow brings. But other than that, yeah, that is always a potential. But I want people to, I guess I just want people to understand. And when I say this, I'm sorry, I forgot about those. The Queen Elizabeth British sovereigns, and those are really cool coins. They're almost exactly a quarter ounce, 0.2354, and those are really, really neat coins. Now, I want to make one other mention of those. A lot of companies will try and sell these as being pre-33 and high premiums and safe from confiscation. The executive order says pre-33 U.S. minted. So these are not collectible coins, but, they're old coins and they're almost a quarter ounce. Heck, even when a lot of the fighter pilots in like the Vietnam War and the Korean War and even World War II, they would have these coins in their flight bags in case they were ever shot down. The British sovereign is one of the most well-known coins across the globe. And at just about a quarter ounce, when you look at the difference in price on those versus other quarter ounce coins, they become very, very attractive. So I do like those a lot from a fractional standpoint. If you need some fractional gold, these are a good way good way to go, certainly.
I interrupted you. You were in the middle of saying you're concerned about supply availability on the silver side.
Yeah, well, it's just one of these things. Like, you've been working with us long enough to know that that's how fast it happens. And every single time it's happened, it's gone from flush to not flush in a matter of a day or two. And that's just the way the market works. And what is flush? What is flush? Flush might be 50, 60, 70, 80, $90 million in inventory. Well, that can disappear real fast. And then what happens? Do the supply chains then face distress because everyone's wiping out your supply? Well, that's just one company in one instance. And so it starts to very quickly snowball. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit by next week, even if we talk and I say, well, yeah, premiums have gone way up. And that's how it happens. Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But all I can say is that this is the first time that I can remember, at least since Halloween probably, where premiums have gone up instead of down. So maybe this is the beginning of a turn. I don't know. I guess only time will tell.
Well, in the preparedness arena, I'm going to make an analogy here because my wife and I have always been concerned about making sure that we have nutritional supplements and things that we need for maintaining health in the face of a potential emergency situation. So we try to stockpile some of those things that we use on a regular basis. The FDA has not been our friend for the past half a year here because replacement water filters for our Berkey water filter now are deemed to be under regulation or investigation by the FDA. The Berkey can't sell them because they claim that they contain silver. Well, silver, they say, is a pesticide. So you're selling a pesticide instead of water filters. They also my wife uses these homeopathic eye drops called Similisan. They're very great. They've been around for 60 years from Switzerland. 0 customer complaints. Nobody got injured by them. But the FDA says, no, they can't sell them anymore because they haven't proven that they're safe as a homeopathy. They don't know what homeopathic drugs are, and they have to go through all these studies and hoops. And so they're stripped off the shelf. We drove all over our town. All the shelves are bare. We tried all of the normal online places. You can't find them anywhere, except once in a while you can find a few at some oddball little corner shop that never got the memo from the FDA that they're supposed to pull them off the shelf. And there's a third one too, some compounded medications that we use for Lyme disease. And they said, no, they can't sell that anymore because they have to go through all this testing and stuff. So my experience from a preparedness standpoint is even when you try as an informed person who's done your research, you know what you need to get, you try to go out and get it, it can be all of a sudden some event can make it almost impossible to find that. And you got to scour around trying to find shreds and scrape the barrel here and there. So that's just an analogy over into a different arena. But this is what can happen in any inventory situation where suddenly you need something and it's out of stock everywhere. So
yeah, well, coming from Minnesota, I never really understood that until I moved down here to Florida and lived through the first hurricane, even though it wasn't even on this side. Within a few days of it saying it could possibly come here, and there's a Publix grocery store on every corner in this darn city, and I'm not kidding you, they're everywhere. And within 2 days, they were all literally empty of the things that you would want, bottled water and and things that you would need in that event. Batteries, you go to Home Depot and they're sold out of plywood in 1 day. So that's the point. And so we hammer on that a lot. And I think it's worth saying because I think it's hard for people to understand how can he be saying that it's so flush and all of a sudden it's not. Well, that's just the way this market works. And everything is just in time in this world. The gold market is no different. When you realize that you only got really 2 mints other than private refineries, but 2 mints, government mints, U.S. and Canada and North America, the rest are from across the Atlantic Ocean. And so you end up with the situation where just in time may not be good enough. And that's one of the reasons that I like to talk about the premiums and the demand. And is it turning up? Yeah, it is.
I guess I'll remind people what we reminded them in the past when this sort of thing starts to occur. This may be early, but here's your early warning is if you want to make sure that this hurts you the least, order early and pay by bank wire so that we can ship right away. Because then we ship within 3 to 5 business days after paying by bank wire. And I found our clients in the shortages that occurred during the COVID crunch and the supply chain disruptions there, they really lived in 2 different worlds. The clients that paid by bank wire and bought things that were in stock received their things typically the same week. And they were perfectly happy. They text me, hey, done again. I got my stuff. I'm really happy. Thanks. I'll do it again soon. And the other people were like, where's my stuff? Where's my stuff? It was 6 weeks, 8 weeks, back ordered and we're waiting for the boat to come in from Australia or whatever. So you don't want to be that guy. make sure you order what's in stock. And if you want, make sure you get it quickly. And kind of, there's a natural tendency, I think human emotions tend to be a bit anxious until you get that sense of closure that now I got what I need. I got the asset or the tool or the whatever, the resource that I need. If you want that sense of closure sooner, do yourself a favor, order what's in stock and pay by a method that allows rapid shipping.
Yep, absolutely. And next week, I think we should maybe touch on a little bit again, all of the trouble that I'm seeing in this industry, and most of it centered around IRA companies. And I just keep seeing so many horrible things. I'd like to talk about it a little bit next week, something that's very important to me. Maybe you'll give me a reminder, and because after all, we're looking out for people to be prepared for what's coming and not to have coins that when you need it, don't provide the liquidity you need and overpaying to get them at the beginning. And I know that's deviating from what we're talking about here, but it's something I've been meaning to talk more about with you. So maybe if there's time next week, we can do that. But
that is near and dear to my heart, because it breaks my heart when I hear these stories, and I hear them almost on a weekly basis. Certainly every month I hear another one of these sob stories from someone who was actually hurt, or their loved one was, their retirement was cut in half or whatever by one of these, predatory outfits that does that. So yes, folks, again, this comes back to doing the necessary steps, but doing them in a smart way, and not falling prey to, I guess, predators out there who will take advantage of the shifting sentiment. Because just as I reported that I have clients that are saying, hey, they're big shot personal financial advisors now contacting them saying, hey, buy shares in GLD because you want to own gold. Well, first of all, if you buy shares in GLD, you don't own any gold, and none of it is your legal title. So just be careful when the momentum sentiment of the herd shifts, that you don't get caught up in the actions that are being recommended for the herd, because they generally will not be the best ones that you could have taken.
If you own GLD, read the prospectus pages 6 through 12 titled Risk Factors. Read it twice. Read it slowly. You'll sell it by morning. I promise you that. So anyways, Dunnigan, I love you, buddy. Thank you. As always, I wish you and everyone else out there a great rest of your week. Stay well, and I look forward to picking up where we left off next time.
Thank you, Andy.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for March 4th through March 11th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce silver maples at $3.39 over spot. We also have circulated British gold Queen Elizabeth sovereigns at $26.99 over melt. And finally, we're offering our choice 1-ounce Palladium bars at just $119 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.